to call a meeting to order. It looks like it's about 7:03. It happens to be Monday, May 10th. And the Personnel Board is duly has a quorum, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. And I'd like to have the roll call. Nancy, would you introduce
Nancy
yourself?
Crowley.
Okay. And Jim?
I'm here.
And Bill Maracek, and that's the composition of the quorum. So we have on the agenda at least the approval of the minutes of the 23rd of March. And Mark Howell has indicated he would like to offer a edit to those minutes, if I can use that word, Mark. And on the other hand, if Nancy and Jim, have either of you had an opportunity to look so you're even ready to vote on approval or not?
Well, I looked at it, but I probably should go back through it again. But...
Okay, so what appears to me is that we're not in a position to approve those minutes. And I guess since I'm so new to this, not sure how does Mark Howell introduce his edit? Is that appropriate when we're not going to even vote or not? So I'm going to need some help here.
I think that under citizen, you could invite a citizen comment and let him tell us what it is, and then we can take that under consideration for any amendments before the minutes are voted on at the next meeting.
Okay, perfect. So I think, Mark, that gives you the opportunity as a citizen to be able to inform us of what you're suggesting.
That's fine, thank you. Would you like that?
I'd like you to.
Oh, super. All right, just on page 4 where there's the second to last paragraph starts with Mark Howell commented. So it's with respect to the comments that I made. The first sentence ends with the words something else. The entire sentence reads, Mark commented that he would support an article that removed administration of classification and compensation and replaced that role with something else. I find something else kind of vague and not, and I actually went back and reviewed the recording and I had said other responsibilities, which I think is more appropriate for a bylaw to outline the responsibilities of the board. And I alluded at that time to comments I'd made in previous meetings, which were along the lines of the board should take a more strategic and policy oriented view. And so I felt like something else was, fairly diminutive in terms of the spirit of my comments. So if you change the words to simply other responsibilities or expanded on that slightly, I'm sure I'd agree that would be an accurate representation of my comments.
Could you, for my benefit, Mark, help me find, I've got the minutes in front of me.
Oh, sure. Page 4.
Do you want me to pull that up? Or?
Page 4.
Yeah, could you do that, Chris?
Yeah, hold on.
Sure. Yeah, for those trying to follow it, find it. It's page 4, second to last paragraph, first sentence, the last 2 words are something else. And I would suggest that at a minimum, something else should be changed to other responsibilities.
So the sentence again, Mark.
The one that Chris has highlighted.
Yes, that an article that removed administration of the classification compensation system and replaced with
that role with other responsibilities.
Okay. And you're if I could, I'd like to, so I don't misrepresent this, the other responsibilities, how would you define that?
So at that time, I alluded to comments I had made in previous meetings.
Right.
And those comments reflected responsibilities with respect to policy, governance oversight, and strategy around personnel.
Okay,
although I did not use those words in that meeting.
yes, yes, okay. That's very helpful to clarify for me what you mean. So I think as I understand, we're going to, since we're not going to vote on those minutes tonight, we have the opportunity to take your comment and to factor that into our final minutes, I guess, that will be, in fact, be presented at the next personnel board meeting.
Thank you very much.
So I just ask that if any board members have any edits that they would like to suggest, please send them to me, not to the whole board. I will compile any edits for distribution for consideration at the next meeting.
Okay.
All right, on the agenda, we have now a discussion as it relates to the public hearing and the select board meetings that have been held in order to determine what does the personnel board want to do. So we have the meeting of April 27th, public meeting in which the select board and citizens were able to comment on the actual language, current language of Article 7. And then at the May 3rd meeting, which was essentially a select board discussion on the entire articles that all of that were being presented by the other boards, that so we have those two, I guess, sessions in which we have comments. So I guess what we're at is and certainly we appreciate, the board appreciates the citizen comments. They have been offered with sincerity and offered with good intentions. And we, as a personnel board, need to consider them, which we will seriously, and need to determine what do we as the personnel board believe is the right next step. So we have some options. We have the option of moving forward with what we have already presented. We have the option of an amendment to Article 7. And we have the opportunity to decide if we want to recommend that there be no action on Article 7, which essentially would allow further review and consideration during the next year. And certainly we've heard from various members of the citizen and residents of the town of Concord that that seems to be a preferred option. And that's, at least has been the most vocal part. So I think what I'd like to do is to see if, and then I think am I correct, Amy, that Susan was going to give us a short brief of as she views the select board's positions?
Yes, she did agree to that. And she's nodding her head. So I think she's
Well, I think I would like to, at this point, before we go any further, is to thank Susan for being here tonight and to see if she can offer her summation of what she believes is the select board's issues.
My summary of what select board comments was that a couple people mentioned that the article is the same as last year, and they would have expected there would have been some movement from last year to this year to tighten it up and identify a role for the for the personnel board. And I think that resulted in their waiving any or postponing any action on the item to see what you all might suggest tonight, that then the select board will go back and discuss. But that was my feeling, that the feeling of most of the members, that they would prefer deferring it and fleshing it out a little for next year.
Okay. Anyone have comments or questions for Susan? So let me just summarize that there is not support to simply remove the compensation and benefits activities, responsibilities that the Personnel Board currently has, and defer any additional conversation, discussion afterwards. They're expecting, again, Susan, this is my summation, they're expecting a totally neatly articulated personnel bylaw that includes everything. Is that a
Actually,
correct
no,
statement?
I think I misspoke. I think that there's no objection, that no one thinks that the class and comp should remain under the jurisdiction of the Personnel Board. But the other pieces of then what next, that's the piece that they'd like to see. My belief is if the amendment only included that would be acceptable. And that with the commitment to look at what are next steps in the coming year and bringing something forth next year that has, committee membership, duties, the sorts of things that we've been talking about, but haven't come to a resolution on.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Jim or Nancy, would either of you like to comment?
I'll be happy to make a comment. I mean, it's pretty obvious that basically, I think there's a lot of controversy about this. And I do agree that I think if it's just the comp and the class, that's pretty, I think people can really see that and see the reason for moving that out so that things can be taken care of quicker and we can serve our town better. However, when that's moved out, I say myself, if we're left in an advisory role, what are we going to do? I do think there's more that the Personnel Board could do. I just don't know what that is per se. And I think that is the issue. If we're going to stay as a Personnel Board, to me, we need to have some things to do that make a difference in the town. And there's a very small little list that doesn't seem to do very much. So I think that if we went ahead and just did comp and class, we probably would be okay with that. Or do we wait? I mean, this is what I'm beginning to think. Do we wait and have the select board maybe help out to look at our role when those two items are removed? So, I think it's difficult because my experience, as a sort of a volunteer in this role, presents a lot of issues when it comes down to human resource and to be able to be privy to a lot of information. And I think that that's where there's a whole piece there that would prevent some items that we might want to get involved in from happening. So anyways, that's a long ways about what I wanted to say, but I think the class and comp should go through. I think it's really important. As far as the other pieces, I think we need to work on that. I do feel the Personnel Board needs to have more to do if we're going to stay as a Personnel Board that makes a difference in the town.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Jim, would you like to?
Sure. And, I mean, I quite honestly thought that was really the point of this from the beginning, was to remove the comp and class system. And we've had numerous conversations discussing the value that we as a board brought to such a process. I've been almost coming up on 3 years in this role, and pretty much every single meeting we've had has centered, if not 100%, was dedicated to going through and changing ranges and adding jobs, and was just there's not a lot of value there. So I mean, from the beginning, I thought that was the point, was to remove the comp and class, from the personnel board's responsibility, and that we could focus on different things. So I mean, I think that should be the goal, is the goal. I mean, I listened through, all of those comments, and it seemed like what I heard was everyone agreed that that was a waste, but or time could be better spent doing other things. So, from my opinion, that really should be the focus.
All right, thank you. I guess my concern is that, and we've got citizens' commentary that we can certainly have participate here in this discussion. But I guess I was a little hesitant that even though there seems to be almost universal agreement, as you pointed out, Jim, about removing the comp and classification, but by doing that, it leaves too many unanswered questions, the future, that in essence, that particular just eliminating class and comp is not going to get approved. Now I don't have any insight, but and maybe what we do, I mean, certainly an option is we make certain that we go ahead and focus on eliminating the class and comp and recognize that we may not be successful because we haven't covered some of the other bases, so to speak, in terms of the future. I mean, I guess I'm somebody who's not been on the board as long as you have, Jim, which is a short period of time, and we don't have the history. But it just seems like we need to do something, and doing nothing is just against my better belief of moving one step at a time and making some progress. So if we were to amend the article as it only pertain with class and comp, I'm going to have to ask Amy here for a little help in terms of how much would we have to change? Because let me stop there. What we have, though, is a proposal of a possible amendment, which I think you've seen, Jim, Nancy, you've seen, came to the personnel board. And that actually certainly places the responsibility of the class and comp with the town manager, but it also provides some other, what I would call other safeguards, such as oversight and such as transparency, that I think are clearly other objectives that not only the personnel board needs to be comfortable with, but also I believe the citizens who have spoken out also feel that it's important. So, Amy, can you give us any of your insight, I guess?
Well, I have a question first, Jim, I'm sorry, Bill, when you were just talking about the amendment that the board has seen, is that what I sent out today as a packet? Is that what you mean? Okay, I just wanted to be sure that there wasn't another one. And so, and I just want to make sure that anybody on the call knows that an amended agenda did go out today that added some possible amendments. Those are ones that I came up with as a rough draft. I originally labeled it as that, as just for me listening to the comments from that I've received through the hearings and some of the employees that reacted to that, and just thinking of ways that we might be able to provide something that would address those. So I don't know if you want to go through those, Bill, or I'm sorry, you led this with a question to me and I asked you one back. So now I'm not sure.
I think, I think the only other thing before perhaps we do that, and then I'll find out from Nancy and Jim if they'd think that's a good step forward, is that I guess there was a comment made that because you can make retroactive approvals of comp and benefits and classification, that, there wasn't a problem, there wasn't an issue. So I guess I find the fact that acceptance of retroactivity, I don't see that as a gold standard for running a city or having a system whereby there is this built-in uncertainty associated with what in fact has the authority decided or not decided. It leaves, I think, open potential for a lot of, you can come up with hypotheticals, they can come up with all kinds of possible issues where litigation is certainly going to be the product. So I don't endorse the fact that retroactive approval is what we as a town should be thinking is the right thing to do. That just, to me, suggests an inefficiency that's built into the system, or just the timing doesn't allow for such. I mean, when you think about what things are retroactive in life or in business, I mean, it's typically there's a problem with the system or there's a problem with timing. And I think the personnel board has given thought to the fact that one way to eliminate retroactivity is essentially to take the compensation and classification system out from its responsibility and give it to the town manager and the human resources director. Yes.
I just note too that, the part about retroactivity, that really, the personnel board can only approve certain things mid-year. And when I say certain things, it is classification and compensation, meaning a job title, new one, or a job title change, and grade placement, that sort of thing. I think we often get confused about classification and compensation in the bylaw as a whole. The bylaw is the town's wage and classification plan, or wage and salary plan. There are a lot of provisions in there about paid leave that aren't what we call the class and comp all the time. Sometimes we call it that, sometimes we don't. But just as an example, Juneteenth is a hot topic and needs some discussion at the the town level and with employees and with unions and all of that. But it's something that we can't just address mid-year. It has to be at a town meeting. And so when we're not ready to do something like that mid-year that happens in the world, the personnel board can't take that action and then have town meeting put it in effect retroactively. So I just, my point is not everything in the bylaw can be retroactive. Just those very specific pieces related to classification and grade assignment.
Thank you. I was thinking of a scenario in which the board approves a job title in a particular range.
Yeah.
But it goes to the town meeting, and for whatever reason, the answer is no. We don't want that job title. We don't believe we need that. So there you've got an individual who you've hired into the city, who no longer has a job unless you can find him or her something else. And that maybe that's a scenario. That's a possible hypothetical situation. And I think we, as the citizens of Concord, should be smart enough to avoid the potential liability associated with that kind of a decision. So I want to just get some more comments. Jim or Nancy, before we move on, do you have anything that you want to add after hearing?
No, I agree with you 100%, though. I mean, it would do far more damage to the town's reputation, to being an employer of choice, or anything. I mean, if you set up a situation where somehow it was clear that someone lost their job because it got reversed, it doesn't make sense. It's a pitfall that's avoidable and it's just unnecessary. So I agree with you.
All right, thank you. Nancy, would you like to
Yeah.
add anything or?
I would agree with Jim. I do agree on that piece, is that, you know, in all the times that we've been doing this, and I've been on the board for many, many years, I've never heard anything like that happening. But probably, I don't know, but I do agree that we have to be careful of any kind of liability like that.
Why don't we just, before we open it up for outside discussion, why don't we walk through the particular revision that was presented this afternoon in the amended agenda?
Could somebody pull
there's-
that up? I'm having trouble reading it on my phone.
Okay,
I'll pull it up.
Thank you.
all right. So we've got here Article 7, and again, this is what we might consider as replacing the existing Article 7 with this language. So number 1, the town manager shall be entrusted with the administration of the town's personnel system. And then 2 is exactly what it currently is. Unless I've missed something, and I don't think so, but if I have, please point that out, that there are changes here from what has already been recorded as Article 7. All right, personnel, number 3, the personnel board shall be composed of 3 members appointed by the select board for 3-year terms. So here's what's added. Members, A, should have knowledge of human resources, practices, and employment law. B, shall not be a current or former employee of the town. And C, may be a member of another town board or committee. All right, so this is a change that I just noticed now, is that it was my understanding that if you're on the personnel board, you couldn't be a member of any other board. And in fact, this particular 3C removes that and allows for that. Is that right or wrong?
It can't completely remove it, Bill. I put it in there because that's something that, you know, again, these are coming from comments that I've heard, people's questions or concerns, and there have been, you know, questions in the past, or people have said it would be great if the personnel board could be on another board or committee.
Right.
However, there are some restrictions to that in other places. I think maybe even under law, that FinCom can't. And Susan's raising her hands. I bet she's more knowledgeable than I am.
In APP 10, which is the select board policies and procedures, it does say that if you're on one, that you shouldn't be on more than one committee.
Okay, then in fact, I would think that we want to delete 3C if in fact we decide this is what we want to present to the select board as our amended article.
Mhm.
Let's go to 4. And the personnel board shall periodically review and advise the town manager regarding the manager's obligations under this bylaw. Report to the select board any concerns about the manager's approach to personnel administration. And C, approve any amendments to the town's policy regarding grievances of employees subject to this bylaw. Jim or Nancy, any comment about number 4?
No, I just want to read it again quickly. No, I'm okay.
Jim, Susan, yes, please. You're mute.
Still on mute.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, there we go.
I just wanted to jump back to number 3.
Yeah,
Second part, shall not be a current or former employee of the town. That's been our practice. It hasn't been embedded in there, which is, but that has been the practice of the personnel board. So, but we hadn't articulated it till now. Just pointing that out.
All right, so there's nothing in the select board, you cited a particular document that point about shall not be a current or former employee, that's not contained in the select board document, I assume.
No, no, I don't believe it is. But that's what the personnel board has done in practice, is several, 2 or 3 times in my tenure, of not appointing current or former employees to the town, to the committee.
Well,
I was
I happen
Stating that we're writing it down. Now you're writing it down.
okay. I personally think that's a good policy. All right, so we're going to go to 4, well, say, now we're to 4. Any, Jim, do you have any
So
comments about 4?
I guess I'd like to just ask what periodically review and advise the town manager, what that really means.
Well, I think it's clear that we don't have, at this moment, a defined, a definition for periodically review. But I think from my experience, it is possible to establish a reporting mechanism in which on a quarterly or a half-year basis, there's a record of activities that have taken place regarding actions under the bylaw that is presented to the personnel board for review and comment. Periodic review really would be then to examine the list, the summary list, and to ask questions as if there happen to be any. But that's my particular notion of what I would think would be meant by periodically review and advise.
I tell you also my thoughts when I put that in was that if the select board or the personnel board felt that there should be a more specific period or method, that could be done through a charge. But anything in the bylaw is very inflexible, at least without going through a whole process. So I thought that having some flexibility to define that in a charge might be helpful for a wide variety of reasons, including that at times it has been, challenging to fill all the slots on the personnel board, and rather than having, everything get held up at a time like that, that there could be options by not having it be in bylaw, but addressing it in a charge instead.
All right, thank you, Jim. Does that help?
Yes, it does.
Clarify?
It does. Yep.
All right, we go, I think if Chris moved down to 5 and 6, okay. So 5, the select board may charge the personnel board with additional responsibilities consistent with authorities specified by the town charter and this personnel bylaw. And I would hope, in terms of as the chair, and I'm sure the other members of the personnel board, is that, we would push, we need to push the select board to perform its, what I'm going to call managerial responsibilities as it relates to boards that report to the select board. This is as much their responsibility as it is ours. And we need to have them become a lot more active in assisting the personnel board and the town citizens in performing and being involved with activities that are meaningful. Any thoughts, Jim or Nancy, on that particular sentence?
No, I will say, I do agree with you. I feel like we, really, when you take the other 2 away, we really need to have something concrete to be able to do to make a difference in what we are doing as a personnel board. Because right now, you know, we really do not have much to do. We don't have much interaction, none whatsoever with employees per se. And it's been like that for quite a while. So it would be nice to have something with more substance as a personnel board member that could make a difference.
All right, thank you. Jim, you have anything to add?
No, I agree.
And then we go to the sixth item. Employees shall be provided an opportunity to review and comment on any proposed personnel policy that could have a significant impact on the conditions of their employment. And this seems sort of like a no-brainer,
Mhm.
to use that term. I don't, again, my frame of reference and history is so small that I'm not sure to what extent this has been, there's been that, how much of an opportunity there's been in the past. But the past is the past, and there essentially is a new personnel board, and with the capability of, I think, offering some really sound suggestions and helping to impact, you know, the working conditions and the attitude of the town to its employees. So I think there's a wealth of opportunity, and I don't think we have. And as I understand from the point that was made earlier, that you don't need to specify that in a bylaw. You just need to be able to sort of state it as an objective, I think, or if the select board wanted to make it a charge, then, you know, obviously they could do that too. Okay, I think we're open, should be open for any citizen comments that would help, you know, help the personnel board, you know, review, exercise its responsibility here. Do I have any, Chris, any comments? Any citizens?
Yeah, so members of the public, you can control your own mic. So, oh, Carlin. I'm sorry, Bill, Carlin's got her hand raised. Yep. You can just identify yourself.
Hi, Carlin Reed, 83 Wits End. I appreciate the folks having the revised personnel bylaw actually posted on the town's webpage. I was able to find it without having to rely on the screen share, so I've had a chance to look at it. Thank you for doing that. I have a question about two provisions, 3C and 4C. In 3C, the question, I'm sorry, 3B. The question I have is 3A, B, and C. A and C are permissive. B is mandatory. B shall not be a current or former employee. I can kind of understand the reason why you don't want to have a current employee to be on the personnel board, but what's the rationale between prohibiting a former employee? And keep in mind, by employee, I'm assuming that would include someone, for example, like myself, who has served as a worker for a very short period of time on the working with the elections office, with the town clerk's office, someone who has served for a very short time. So the rationale for prohibiting former employees, that's one. And then the other piece is number 4C. I just want to understand the language. It says approve any amendments. Does that necessarily mean that the personnel board could reject any amendments to the town's policy? Okay, those are the two questions, 3B and 4C. Thanks.
All right, let me start with what I believe is relevant to 3B. I think the important thing here is to avoid any conflict of interest or any perceived conflict of interest, because any perceived conflict of interest raises doubt, in my opinion. You don't want to have an individual who is in a position that has somebody coming before, a former employee of his or her coming before the personnel board with a grievance or with an argument, and it would be my belief that it would be a perceived conflict of interest to have a former sitting employee who had responsibility as a manager, let's say, be making decisions. Again, I want to avoid any perceived conflict of interest. And this is how you would do it. So we've got down to 4C, approve any amendments to the town's policy regarding grievances or employees subject to this bylaw. Well, I probably could use help here from the personnel board members or even Amy, but we're saying here that the board values having a grievance procedure and process. And that particular grievance procedure or process is an integral part of having a workforce that believes that their interests are important for consideration and for being respected. So if there was going to be any change in policy, and that change in policy would, as I understand, would initiate from the town, primarily the human resources director, that the personnel board would have the opportunity to voice its opinion as to that particular change. And in fact, since it says approve, if in fact the proposed change in the policy regarding grievances was not something that the personnel board felt was appropriate or necessary or was far-reaching, then the personnel board could say, no, we don't agree with that. So maybe this is a good time for Amy just to just provide whatever insight she has on this.
Yeah, again, from listening to public comments and some of the employees that I have spoken to, although more on the public side, it sounded like there was concern about grievances and due process and cause protection. And I thought this might provide some assurance to employees that still exists. Now, the reality is the charter, there's no proposal to change the charter, which is what provides cause protection versus at-will employment. And there's no proposal to, or we can't even do anything that takes away public employees' due process rights, that which is the right to be for notice and to be heard. Basically, there's some proceedings there. So we have to have a process for that. And this just seemed like if there was anything that the personnel board was still going to have authority for, or some versus advisory opinion on, that this might be it, because that was one of the areas that people seem most concerned about, is protecting those rights of the employees.
Okay. Jim or Nancy, do you have any thoughts or comments you would like to add to what I had to say or what Amy has added to the conversation?
No, I'm fine with both of you, what's been said.
Okay, thank you. Jim?
Yeah, same here. I mean, by definition, if we can approve, then I guess if we don't approve, we reject.
Right.
I think it waters down the personnel board entirely if it's just, providing an opinion. I think so. I would agree with the approve.
Okay.
Yep.
Chris, do we have any other citizens?
There's no other hands raised. Maybe give some people some time to raise their hands. Yeah, I don't see any.
Okay. Well, I think we're at the point of, again, we've got some choices. We had the choice of leaving the current Article 7 as is. We have the option of providing additional information in response to questions and comments, which I guess in some ways we've already done. We can certainly recommend no action on Article 7. And that particular decision would certainly allow time for further review and consideration during the next year. And then we've got the third option, I guess, is to whether or not to present an amended Article 7 for consideration to the citizens and to the select board for their consideration. Have I missed any option, do you think, board?
No.
Okay.
The only thing I might say is that since we would be doing some newer items on our list as seen under 3 and 4, and what do we got, 5 and 6, I would assume people would want to know what does that mean and what are we doing. And so I think that's something that's going to come along between the select board and as we find our new role. So I don't know. I mean, I would go either way at this point because I think we're really looking for the class comp, and then we're going to do this other things for the personal board. So it looks like that we are not losing ground per se, that we still will be involved and more so. So I don't know.
Okay. I think Nancy, one thing to consider would be that that maybe in whatever information were to be passed out at town meeting, I guess Q&A or FQAs, we could provide some, we could tease out number 5. And there've already been some ideas that the citizens have proposed, and we, the board, could probably add some. And again, we're talking about the select board. It's their decision to charge us. That's what number 5 is all about.
Mm-hmm.
We can help them, and the citizens can help them by offering some suggestions. So I think we've got some meaningful subject matter right now that's been presented by various members of the citizenry that are very valuable and make a lot of sense for the town and the citizens and its employees. But I think we could address that at the in an frequently FAQs. And probably the same thing with number 6 is, what do we mean by that? I'm not sure that this is going to take a lot of thought necessarily, because an opportunity to review and comment, I mean, you either have to send them something in writing or you have to have a meeting. I mean, so I don't see that being a real mystery to be able to find in a FAQ. Nancy, do you think that helps to address the concern you've got?
Yeah, I do. I just feel like I kept on hearing with all those other meetings that, retaining us in an advisory role, basically, what will we really do? So this does clarify it more. We all may want to know exactly what each area of 3, 4, 5, whatever, will mean. You know what I mean? So, and we don't really know that yet. We just kind of need some, yeah. So that's the only place where I'm at.
All right, thank you. Jim, any other thoughts?
No, not really. I mean, I think, it's clear there's no support, for moving forward as is. And, it's also clear that there's no support amongst us for recommending no action and going back and studying it for a year. So, I mean, I think an amendment's the way to go.
Thank you. I think we should, Chris, ask if there are any other citizen who would like to comment. We should, before we move to the next step, invite them to ask or to participate.
I think Miss Bates has her hand raised.
Thank you. I just wondered if anyone has touched base with the town moderator on the wording on this, only because there are rules about making an article less impactful, but you can't make it bigger than it was. And so I just think it would be good to have the moderator look at the language. I mean, you can go ahead and if you want to vote to go with this, but I think that she needs to be involved in terms of reviewing the wording and seeing if it falls within the parameters of established by the original article.
I think that's an excellent point. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I know that the intent was to have town council also look at this, and yes, the moderator as well. So 2 good points that didn't get articulated and mentioned before, but they were certainly thought about. Very important process questions for sure. Well,
Can I
yes.
I would
Amy?
note too, our intention, because I don't think we've said it, would be to get a communication out to the employees so that they could also comment in case there was anything else there.
Okay.
It's a great idea.
So I think, just to go back to previous discussions, I think in taking a look at the revised personnel bylaw amendment, this again was what Chris had put up on the screen. The one item that we were going to delete was 3C, because that in fact is an incorrectly stated position. So we would remove 3C from the published revised amendment article that was made public today. Is that clear to Nancy and Jim that we're going to remove 3C?
Right, and we're going to remove it because it's wrong.
Yeah, I found the specific part of the APP 10, and the heading is dual committee appointments. In general, individuals shall be limited to service on only one committee at a time, especially in a case of a statutory or regulatory committee. Exceptions shall be made, for instance, in which by law or special committee charge, a committee member serves as a representative on another committee. For example, Board of Health representative on Council on Aging, or serves on a joint committee formed from other committees. So those are the exceptions, but you wouldn't necessarily be on the personnel board and on the light plant or on the cultural council, unless there was some specific connection between the committee.
Right. But there are some really great committees that I know, yes, I did serve on others when I was on the housing and also when I was on the Council on Aging and stuff like that. But sometimes it's sort of a committee that you really, some sort of task force that was put up or something that was very short. I would hope that might be something that, you know, I guess you have to get permission if you wanted to do it, but it would be very low key and not probably interfere with anything that you did with the personnel board. But I don't know, that's just my feeling, because I think there's a lot of great committees. And
Well, I think, don't we have here a situation that we're either going to have to, I mean, it's leave it in or take it out, 3C.
right, well, I guess we take it out because of Susan, that APP 10. So
Okay. Okay.
I just wanted to make my comment that
I appreciate that. I think there are a lot of very good committees, and there are very good boards that are in the town of Concord that are doing great things. And yes, might be nice just to be on more than one, but I think, this is clearly we're making a commitment that this is our first and only priority as it relates to being a volunteer in the town, on a board. We can do other things and no one's going to care, but okay. So Jim, just to get your concurrence that the point here would be to eliminate 3C.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. So I think we're at the point of needing a motion as it relates to the amended Article 7 as presented and on the this afternoon and on the town's current website, except for 3C. So do I hear a motion to
I'll make a motion to adopt the amended Article 7 less 3C.
okay. Is there a second?
I will second that.
All right. We're going to do a vote in favor. Jim,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes,
and Bill, yes. Okay, so we have we've made a decision tonight to present an amended personnel bylaw. And next step, I'm going to need some help from either Susan or Amy in terms of, yes, we need to get counsel to take a look at this. Yes, we need to get the moderator. How are those things accomplished?
I can work with you, Bill. I think I will send it off to council. Council reviews all warrant articles anyway, but I think we would want Labor Council to review this as well. So I'll make sure it gets there. And then you and I can coordinate about consulting with the moderator.
Okay. Susan, do you have anything to add? Do you think that's the right approach? Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I think the only other thing I'd like to introduce and just maybe get your opinions is, I'm prepared to arrange, I guess, a phone call with select board members just to answer questions that they might have about what in fact is being presented. I don't think that's any violation of any existing regulation, or and if it is, then you'll have to let me know. But the idea is to open up some dialogue and some communication here to try to explain the personnel board's decision, the basis for the decision, and in fact to solicit their time and help and involvement as we move ahead. Any comments about that?
I would suggest that you contact the chair, Linda Escobedo, and ask to be put on the agenda for next week, because we deferred last week talking about the article after the initial presentation, and this week because we're waiting to see what happened at your meeting this evening. So I think the next step would be to contact her and ask to be put on the agenda for Monday. So
Okay.
you could do exactly that, what you're talking about.
Okay, thank you. I didn't even think about that. So thank you. That makes good sense. Okay.
Hi, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, just to kind of give you an update, Amy, in terms of deadlines. So the motions are due on May 21st, and then the summaries for each warrant article are due May 27th. So it might be that May 17th would be the last time that the select board can talk about this stuff before we kind of go to print.
Yep.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you. I think before we close, I think I really hope if there's any additional individual citizens in the waiting room that have wanted to say something and haven't, I would like to offer this time before we close to entertain their thoughts. Do we have anybody, Chris?
No, there's no one in the waiting room, and there are no hands raised currently.
Okay. Well, the record will show that we tried to make certain that everybody had a chance to speak. Okay. Is there any other items to come before the personnel board tonight?
Nope.
All right, none, see none, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I motion to adjourn.
All right, we have a motion from Jim. Is there a
I will
second?
second. I
All
will
right,
second that.
thank you, Nancy. So we're going to go around and the vote. So Jim,
Yes.
yes, okay, and Nancy
Yes.
and Bill, yes. So thank you all very much for participating tonight. Thank you, Susan, for being involved in this. You're a good guide for us to
I hope
use.
so.
And you have a history that I don't have. So I really do thank you for that. And Amy, thank you too. And I guess that's it. And Chris,
Right.
can't forget Chris. Thank you, sir.
Ms. Tweet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Everyone.
Good night.
Yeah.